hike solo whenever I get the chance. EMT training all week, ride-alongs, studying until my eyes ache. The trail's the only place my head slows down. Out there, it's simple. Walk, breathe, hydrate, move. That morning was clear and dry. I parked in a small dirt lot that maybe held 6 cars. Only 2 were there, both dusty like they hadn't moved in a while. I signed the trailhead sheet like I always do. Name, date, route. Offline map downloaded. Headlamp charged, even though it was midday. Small knife in my pack. Basic first aid kit. I don't go into the woods without a way to stop bleeding. The first mile was normal. Dry trail, pale dirt, scrubby chaparral on both sides. But it stayed quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Usually you hear birds, insects, something. Here it was mostly wind moving through brush. About 20 minutes in, I noticed a boot print just off the trail, fresh enough that the edges hadn't crumbled yet. It was turned opposite the usual hiking direction. Someone stepping off trail isn't weird, but the direction bothered me. I stared at it, then kept walking. People turn around. Rangers cut through. It didn't mean anything. Around noon, I stepped off trail to eat. Just a few yards. I leaned my pack against a rock, sat down and stared at the ridgeline while I worked through a protein bar and a smashed sandwich. Halfway through, I heard a small click behind me. The sound of a rock crunching under someone's weight. Nothing but brush and sunlight. No one on the trail. I stood for a second, scanning through the brush, waiting for movement. Nothing moved. No footsteps fading away. No voices. I sat back down and finished eating, annoyed at myself for getting jumpy over a noise. When I slipped my pack back on, my back went instantly cold. Water was soaking through my shirt. I pulled the pack off and looked at the hydration tube. There was a clean, straight slice across it. I ran my fingers along the tube, checking for another puncture, trying to make it make sense, but there was just that one precise cut. I pinched the tube above the slice to stop the flow. The bladder still had water in it, but the system was compromised. I could try to patch it, but if it failed again mid-descent, I'd lose more water and more time. And time is leverage in heat. I packed everything tight and stepped back onto the trail. A minute later, I heard movement in the brush. More than one set of steps. It wasn't a normal hiking rhythm. More like shifting around, stopping, repositioning. I stopped. The movement stopped too. I waited, counted to 10. Nothing. So I started walking again. The movement resumed. It matched me. Whoever cut the tube had been close enough to touch my gear, close enough to watch me eat. That wasn't coincidence. I pulled up my offline map. There was no service, but the route was there. I had 2 options. Continue deeper into the longer loop with compromised water, or take the fastest descent back to the lot. I decided to turn around. The movement moved with me. I started walking faster. The brush answered. I kept my breathing controlled on purpose. In through the nose, out through the mouth. If I let my breathing spiral, my legs would follow. An exhale came from somewhere off my right side. Close, human and close. I didn't look. The trail curved into switchbacks. I cut across one to shave time and immediately regretted it when I lost sight of the trail for a few seconds. The brush thickened and sound bounced weirdly. I pushed back to the path, and then I saw them. Not clearly, but shapes through gaps in the chaparral. 2 darker figures spaced apart, then a third farther back. There was no attempt at pretending to be normal hikers. I ran. It wasn't controlled or graceful. It was downhill gravel and sliding boots. I slipped once, scraped my palm, got up and kept going without thinking. My phone flashed no service again. I stared at the offline map dot like it could move faster if I focused hard enough. Behind me, I heard movement. I counted my steps in sets of 20. Focus on form. If I burned out, I'd slow. If I slowed, they'd close in. The trailhead came into view like a sudden opening in a wall. I burst out of the brush into the parking lot and spun around. Nothing followed me out. My car sat where I'd left it, windows intact, no damage, but my driver's side mirror was folded inward. I never fold it, and it doesn't fold itself. It looked like someone had checked it. I got in and locked the doors before I even started the engine. My hands felt tight on the steering wheel as I scanned the trees one last time. No one stepped out. No movement. I drove straight to the nearest gas station and called the ranger station. They took my info, asked if anything had been stolen. No, I said. That's the part that still sits wrong. They didn't take my wallet, my keys, my phone. They took water, which means it wasn't about theft. It was about options. And the worst part is knowing they were patient enough to cut it quietly and confident enough to follow me without saying a word. In September 2022, I drove out to Shenandoah after work. Early fall, still warm but not humid. I chose a less popular loop because I prefer quiet trails. I track my mileage, train for half marathons, and I like knowing exactly how long something will take. I checked sunset and did the math. I knew I had enough daylight. The parking lot was active but not packed. Families, a few couples, nothing unusual. I felt good. Plenty of water. Phone at 100%. Offline map downloaded. The first hour was perfect. Leaves just starting to turn, filtered light through trees, that rhythmic crunch of boots on dirt. I remember thinking how good it felt to be somewhere no one needed anything from me. Then the trail bent into a shaded curve where the canopy thickened, and he was there. An older man, maybe late 50s or early 60s, standing just past the bend like he'd stopped intentionally. He wasn't blocking the trail, but he was positioned where you couldn't avoid him without stepping off. And he turned before I got close. "You're cutting it close," he said with a small smile. I laughed. "I'll be fine." He looked up at the sky through the trees. "Sun drops quick here. Trails get confusing when it gets dark." I didn't let anything show in my voice. "I've got a map." He nodded like that didn't matter. "I know a faster way back," he said. "Shortcut. Saves you a lot of time." He sounded so certain, like I'd already agreed. I should have said no cleanly. Instead, I did what I've done my whole life, kept it polite. "Maybe," I said. "I might just stick to the loop." He started walking anyway. "It's just up here," he said over his shoulder. "Come on." I followed, because it felt easier to go a few steps and reassess than to create tension with a stranger in the woods. I stayed several paces behind him. He walked casually, but he kept looking back, not in a friendly, "you okay" way. More like he was checking if I was still there. Every 10 seconds his head would turn slightly, eyes on me, then forward again. The trail narrowed. The ground dipped more steeply. Brush got thicker, it felt less maintained. I noticed something small but important. No blazes, no painted markers, no carved trail signs, nothing official. The path became more of a suggestion than a trail. I pulled out my phone and opened my map app. The blue dot flickered, signal bars dropped. Then the map stalled. No GPS. I stood still for a second, staring at my phone like it had personally betrayed me. I hadn't planned for a dead zone. I hadn't planned to be off the marked trail at this time of day. He kept walking for a few more steps before realizing I wasn't behind him anymore. "You good?" he called. I forced my voice to stay even. "Yeah, I'm actually gonna head back." He stopped. Then he turned fully toward me. He didn't look angry, or confused, or disappointed. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides, face neutral. The calm was worse than if he'd gotten mad. It felt like he didn't need me to follow, like this wasn't about convincing me. Then, somewhere above us, deeper into the trees, a branch snapped. He didn't even look toward the sound. That was the moment my politeness finally shut off. I turned uphill and started moving fast. Behind me, I heard movement. He was following. I focused on the incline. Uphill meant visibility. Uphill meant control. My legs are strong. I trust them. That thought became my anchor. I slipped once on loose dirt and grabbed a root to keep from falling. My breathing got loud in my ears, and I hated that because it made me feel exposed. I didn't look back. If I looked back and he was close, I'd panic. If I looked back and he wasn't there, I'd doubt myself. Neither helped. The path started to look slightly more defined. I saw a faint blaze on a tree ahead, barely visible but there. Marked trail. I stepped onto it and kept moving. After about 30 seconds, I finally looked over my shoulder. Nothing. No man. No movement. No sound. Just trees. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Because if he turned around that quickly, he knew the area well. And if he hadn't been alone, I'd never have seen who else was there. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sky had changed to that early dusk blue. Families were packing up, car doors slamming, normal life. I walked straight to my car, unlocked it, and got inside real fast, and locked the doors immediately. I sat there for a second, breathing hard, trying to calm down. Then I saw a fingerprint streak on my windshield. Passenger side, low corner, a curved streak as if someone had braced their hand against the glass. I stared at it, replaying the day. I hadn't touched that spot, and I never told him which car was mine. The parking lot was full enough that you couldn't easily guess. I looked up slowly and scanned the tree line. People were still loading coolers, talking, laughing, no one watching me in an obvious way. But the longer I sat there, the more I understood something simple and ugly. The shortcut may not have been about saving time. It may have been about taking me somewhere no one would hear me say no. In July 2020, I was heading into my senior year of college, and hiking had become my way of dealing with everything feeling uncertain. I wasn't new to solo hikes, but I also wasn't reckless. I picked routes that were marked, downloaded maps offline, told someone where I was going. That day in Olympic National Forest, I specifically chose a stretch with an open ridgeline. Fewer trees, better visibility. In my head, that meant control. If someone was near me, I'd see them. After about 1 hour into the trail, I heard a whistle. 2 short bursts, one long. It cut through the wind. I paused, scanning the ridge. My first assumption was the most obvious. Other hikers, maybe someone calling to a friend out of sight. Sound carries weirdly in open terrain. I kept walking. A few minutes later, it came again. 2 short, one long. Closer now. The ridge was open enough that if someone was within 100 yards, I should have seen movement. Bright clothing, a pack, anything. There was no one ahead of me, no one behind me. No voices, no visible hikers stepping off trail to take photos. I turned in a slow circle, trying not to look jumpy. Nothing. I told myself not to be dramatic. It was a popular park. People use whistles. It didn't mean anything. I walked on. Then it came a third time. 2 short, one long. This time it sounded lower, like it was coming from the slope just beneath the ridgeline. I stopped again. I decided to test it. I slowed my pace deliberately. I wanted to see if whoever was behind me would close the distance. Within seconds, 2 short, one long. That's when my brain stepped out of denial. I stepped off the trail as if to let someone pass. It was a normal hiking move, and stood there, facing outward toward the view, pretending I was taking in the scenery. The whistle came again, same pattern. I scanned the slope. It was open enough to see through gaps in brush and scattered trees, but I didn't see any obvious figure. No bright jacket, no backpack silhouette. I resumed walking, faster this time. The ridge dipped slightly and curved toward a thinner section of trees. The problem is that the path was predictable. If someone was pacing me, staying on the trail meant staying easy to track. I did something I normally wouldn't do. I left the trail. I went downhill through brush, stepping over low branches, pushing through scrub, aiming to reconnect closer to the road instead of following the established path. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it broke the pattern. As soon as I cut off trail, the whistle stopped. That silence was louder than the sound. I moved quickly through the uneven ground with my shoes sliding slightly on the dry dirt. Branches tugged at my sleeves. I tried to step lightly, which is ridiculous when you're crashing through brush, but I didn't want to broadcast exactly where I was. A few seconds later, I saw something. Not clearly enough to describe to a ranger with confidence. Just a pale flash between tree trunks, like a shirt catching sun, or a face, or forearms. It wasn't charging at me. It was moving sideways, as if relocating and staying with me. That's when fear stopped being abstract. My thoughts narrowed into one instruction: get back to where other people exist. So I ran, Downhill first, then turned across the slope. Years of running paying off, but uneven terrain makes speed messy. I tripped once and scraped my palm hard against a rock. The sting flared immediately, but I didn't stop. Stopping felt like surrendering position. I didn't hear the whistle anymore. That unsettled me more than if it had continued. A sound gives you a reference point. Silence leaves you guessing. After what felt longer than it probably was, I broke through onto a wider, established trail, with packed dirt, clear footprints, and a visible blaze on a tree. And then, voices. A kid whining about being tired, a dog barking, someone laughing. The sound of other people hit me like air after being underwater. I slowed down, but didn't fully relax until I saw the trailhead parking lot through the trees. I walked straight to my car and sat there trying to assign it a harmless explanation. Maybe it was teenagers messing around. Maybe someone practicing a bird call. Maybe my brain stitched separate events into one story. Maybe, and more maybes. But the pattern didn't sit right. Two short, one long, matching my pace, matching my movement, moving when I moved. I drove home feeling unsettled but embarrassed by how shaken I was without anything concrete to point to. Just a sound. A few days later, I was scrolling through TikTok and saw a hiking clip filmed on what looked like the same ridge. Someone narrating about how peaceful it was. In the background, faint but clear, two short, one long. The comments were joking about nature vibes and asking what bird made that noise. I watched the clip dozens of times. The person filming didn't react. They probably didn't even register it consciously. What bothers me most is that it blended into the forest like it belonged there. And maybe that's the point. I went hiking near Ithaca in September 2023 because my brain wouldn't shut up. I'm a graduate researcher, so most of my life happens inside a laptop. Deadlines, revisions, polite emails that aren't actually polite. Hiking is how I reset. No screens, no Slack notifications, just something physical and uncomplicated. I don't go out unprepared. Boots, not sneakers. Small pack with water, snacks, headlamp, and pepper spray I actually know how to use. The trail I picked wasn't remote wilderness. It was one of those wooded systems close to town. The first stretch was normal. Late summer leaves edging into fall, sun coming through in stripes. The dirt slightly damp in the shaded sections. I noticed small things automatically. Broken twigs, soil texture, signs of recent trail work. That's just how my brain works. About 40 minutes in, the trail narrowed, and that's where I saw a rope. It was stretched low across the path at ankle height. Thin and dark, easy to miss. It wasn't marked in any way, just a narrow gap between two small trees. It was positioned right before a downhill section, steep enough that if you caught your foot and pitched forward, you'd hit hard. Rocks, roots, a bad angle. I stopped immediately. The placement wasn't random. It looked strategic. I pulled out my phone and took a photo, just in case. Then I stepped over it carefully. The moment my boot hit the ground on the other side, I heard movement in the trees. I stood there, listening. The woods went back to quiet. I told myself I was connecting dots that didn't belong together. You saw a rope. You startled something. That's it. So I continued down the trail. The next section curved into tight switchbacks. The trees thickened and visibility dropped. It hit me that someone above the trail could track my position without me ever seeing them. They'd only need to catch glimpses through gaps. That thought changed the way I moved. At the second bend, I stopped and listened again, but heard nothing obvious. Still, I turned around. I didn't like the feeling in my chest, the one that says leave before you're committed deeper. No ego involved, just logic. I walked back toward the rope. It wasn't tight anymore. It was slack like someone had pulled it down and let it hang looser. That detail stripped away any harmless explanation. Someone had adjusted it while I was within earshot. I didn't want to be within arm's reach of it. As soon as I cleared it, I heard movement again. I didn't call out. I didn't want to announce my location. I kept walking back toward the wider section of trail, But every few steps I heard something off to the side. I turned suddenly once, trying to catch someone mid-step. The trail started to feel like a funnel. If someone wanted me to continue along it, they'd let me. I decided to break the script. From the map, I remembered a service road running downhill east of the trail. Not ideal terrain, but wide and open, harder to hide next to. I stepped off the trail entirely and headed downhill through brush. It wasn't graceful. Branches snagged my sleeves. My boots slid in the loose dirt. I grabbed small saplings to steady myself. My forearms got scratched, my jeans streaked with mud, but behind me I kept hearing movement. That was the worst part, the sense that my path was being observed and matched. I kept going. No hesitation now. Downhill until the slope eased and I hit gravel. The service road was ugly and perfect. Wide, open. No blind corners, no dense brush 5 feet off my shoulder. I stepped onto it and walked fast toward the direction of the parking area. I kept my phone in my hand, thumb hovering near the emergency call option. I looked back more than once, but there was nothing visible. When I reached the lot, there were still people around. I walked straight to my car. I got in, locked the doors, and finally let myself breathe harder than I had on the trail. My hands felt shaky now that I was contained. I opened my camera roll to look at the photo of the rope. It wasn't there. I scrolled back through everything from that day. Landscapes, a photo of my boots on the ridge earlier. But no rope. I checked the deleted folder. Nothing. I remembered seeing the image on my screen. I think I pointed my phone to the rope but didn't click the button. Someone set a trap in broad daylight, stayed just out of sight the entire time, and let me leave with doubt instead of proof. And doubt is harder to report. This happened to me in July 2022 in the Smoky Mountains. Hiking is how I clear my head. I'm not out there doing hardcore backcountry alone. I stick to trails that show up in brochures. When I pulled into the parking lot that morning, it looked exactly how I wanted it to look. Cars lined both sides, a family unloading backpacks, 2 girls taking pictures by the trail sign, an older couple tightening the straps on their packs. I remember thinking, good, this is smart. I locked my car, adjusted my pack, and started up the trail feeling good. On the first stretch, I passed a few hikers heading down. We did the polite nod. One guy joked about the heat. A woman with a golden retriever warned me about a muddy patch up ahead. It felt social and alive. About a mile in, the trail got narrower and dipped a little. Still marked and obvious, but I hadn't seen anyone in maybe 10 minutes. I didn't think much of it. It's normal for people to space out. What bothered me was how the forest went quiet. It didn't fade gradually. It stopped. Birds cut off. Insects gone. It wasn't peaceful. It felt wrong, like someone muted the background noise. I slowed a little, and that's when I heard crunching behind me. Not one set of footsteps. More. It wasn't the easy, steady cadence of a single hiker. It sounded staggered, slightly offbeat, pausing, then moving again. I kept walking at first. I told myself this is a busy trail. Of course, someone's behind you. But the spacing felt off. If it were one person, they'd either close the distance or hang back consistently. I decided to let them pass. I stepped to the side of the trail and pretended to adjust my pack strap. The crunching slowed, then stopped. No one walked by. I waited a few seconds, trying not to look jumpy. Then I looked over my shoulder casually. The trail behind me was empty, just trees, no movement. I felt that sudden tightness in my chest. I got back on the trail and walked faster. The crunching resumed. My breathing grew heavier, which made it harder to judge how near they were. I told myself not to overreact. The mind fills in gaps when you're alone. But when I heard a second distinct pattern of steps overlap the first, something shifted in me. I realized I'd gone farther than I thought. The incline had been gentle, the trail easy. I hadn't checked the distance in a while, and the busy section was definitely behind me. I decided to turn around. The second I pivoted, the footsteps adjusted too, like reorienting. That was enough. I started walking downhill. Crunching followed. My heart started pounding harder than the terrain warranted. I told myself to keep it controlled. Downhill running is risky. One bad step and you're on the ground. But then I heard the steps again, closer this time. And I started running. Downhill, which is the worst direction to sprint in the woods. I nearly lost my footing on gravel and windmilled my arms to stay upright, and sweat blurred my vision. I focused on staying upright, on the trail markers, on breathing. Behind me, the crunching stayed with me. Not right on top of me, but not far enough to feel safe. The downhill stretch felt endless. Every curve looked the same. My lungs burned, my legs shook from the effort. Then I saw the wooden trailhead sign through the trees. Relief hit hard and fast. I burst out of the tree line, expecting to see cars, people, movement. The parking lot was empty. Not mostly empty. Empty. Except for my car. For a second, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn, that I'd somehow looped to a different exit, but it was mine. Every other car was gone. The space felt exposed in a way it hadn't that morning. I didn't slow down until I reached my door. I unlocked it and climbed in so fast I hit my knee against the steering column. I locked the doors immediately. Only then did I look up properly. I started the engine, and as I pulled out of the lot, I checked the rearview mirror over and over. No one emerged from the tree line. No visible proof of anything. I never saw who was behind me. That's what sticks with me. Not a face. Not a voice. Not a confrontation. Just the moment the forest turned silent, and the sound of more than one set of footsteps, deciding to follow. So if you ever said, "I'll just go for a peaceful solo hike," congratulations. You survived this one. Go ahead, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next nightmare, and tell me which story messed with you the most. And if you think